Hey guys, it's Melissa, and tonight we're going to chat about Instagram captions and how to write a good caption and what makes a caption really engaging and really fun for people to read and interact with and comment and like and make them stop their scroll for even just 30 seconds to stop and see what you actually have to say. So you can Google how to write captions. There's a ton of tips and blog posts and articles out there. But tonight, I didn't want to do any of that. I really just wanted to speak from my own experience, what has worked well for me, and hopefully you guys can learn from some of these, I'll call them best practices, but really they're just things that I found work for me and things that when I sat down, I really had to think about like the things that I do consistently and things that work, because they're not things where I just say like, I'm going to do number 3 today. Like I try and keep things very organic, very real, very authentic. And I know some of those words are kind of catchphrases here on social media, but it's true. I want everything to be organic and real and genuine. So these are just things that I try and keep in mind, and I think that you should also keep in mind, and maybe will help you as you try and write captions that, again, people just want to stop and read and want to hear what you have to say, because that's going to create a lot of trust with your audience and going to help them get to know you better, engage with you more, and it's just a win-win-win all around. So thing number 1, we're going to jump right in here, but thing number 1, I'll call it rule number 1, is that this isn't even related to the caption part, but just before we talk about anything caption related, I just had to say one thing, which is, oh, Ashley, thank you. She said, I like how positive your captions are. Even when I know things may be chaotic for you, you always find the good. Oh my gosh, thank you, Ashley. So before I talk about anything caption related, the one thing that we have to get out of the way here is that your picture has to be good. Social media, especially Instagram, well, maybe not Twitter, but especially Instagram, and that's what we're talking about tonight, is all about visuals and pictures. And even in stories, it's about visuals. So before you try and spend all your time and effort into writing a good caption, make sure that your pictures are decent. And by decent, I mean that they're clear, the lighting is good, and they're nice to look at. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be the best picture you're ever going to post in your entire life. But before we get into talking about captions, make sure that you're posting a picture that you actually like and that looks pretty good and is showing off whatever it is that you're trying to show off in a nice way. So it looks clean and crisp, and it's just nice to look at. So that is just one thing I want to get out of the way. And if you're curious on pictures, how to take better pictures, anything like that, I do have some blog posts at the link in my bio about photography and about what I use, if that's something that you're interested in and you think that you'd like to work on and improve on. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, make sure that your picture is, decent. Doesn't have to be the best picture you've ever taken, doesn't have to be the coolest thing the internet has ever seen, but just make sure it's a nice picture. And then we're going to go right into best practices, and then I'm going to share some just kind of random tips and answer some of the questions that you guys had sent me in my stories yesterday, and then we can, of course, talk about any other questions or anything that you guys have. So like I said in the beginning of this isn't like a roundup of caption ideas or generic best tips. These are just things that I went through my own Instagram feed and looked at my own captions and was trying to pull out things that I do consistently that seem to work pretty well, and kind of show you and peel back the curtain on what my thought process is and my process and when I sit down to write captions. You guys might know that I plan my Instagram feed in advance. So I use an app. I use the Snug app, but there's a million apps out there that you can do this. And I plan what pictures we'll post in what order, so I know what my feed will look like. That's just for the visual part though. I don't plan anything for my captions. So I really do think that there's value in writing your captions in real time or just in the moment that you feel inspired. So maybe if it's like lunchtime and I'm thinking about something and I have an idea and I want to get it off my chest, I'll open up my notes app in my phone and I'll just jot it down. And it may be like very messy or not even complete sentences, but sometimes I'll just jot something down and then I can come back to that later and kind of expand on that thought or that idea. And that might become a really cool caption. But for the most part, I like to post in the evening, because in the evening after a long day, the days always feel long sometimes, but I like to come home. I eat, I exercise, I crochet, I watch TV, whatever it is I'm going to do. And then usually around like an hour before I go to bed, I'll kind of sit down and start thinking about a caption. And one of the places I always start with is just like what's going on in my life. And I don't normally share like specifics of what's going on in my life, but I like this saying that says, turn your mess into a message. So if there's something that's really bothering me or something that's been on my mind, I try and think about how I can make that into something that will help someone else. Maybe it's just sharing an experience or something like that. But usually when I sit down at the end of the day, those are things that sometimes pop into my head. And that leads me into one of my first points, which is to be vulnerable. I've talked about this a number of times, and sometimes people ask me, do you ever, I get this question a lot actually, but people ask me, do you ever feel scared, or are you ever nervous about what you're about to post? And yes, I do. But I think if it's like a slight nervousness because you're peeling back a layer and showing people a part of you and showing inside your heart or inside your mind, that's like a good fear. That's a fear that you're putting something out into the world that you care about and that means a lot to you. So don't ever shy away from being vulnerable. I don't think you need to unveil like your deepest, darkest secrets. But again, if there's something on your mind and it can help someone else, try and think about how you can share that and let someone else know that either they're not alone, or tell them something that you wish that you would have known. One of the things that I kind of like to do to prompt myself of what to say is, what would I have told myself a year ago? Or what would I have told myself when I was starting to design this pattern? If you guys have followed me for a while, you might have seen my crochet cardigan called the Pebble Cardi. And that cardigan took me like more than 6 months to design. So there was a lot of like things happening along the way where I would share bits and pieces of that. So I'm kind of telling a story. So every time I post part of that work in progress, I'm leading people along that story. So by the time they see the final cardigan, the final pattern, they already know the story behind it. So try and think of that and how your feed is more than just like individual posts, but maybe how things can connect and really the story that you're telling behind something. So for the Pebble Cardi, for example, I shared a lot of times that I wanted to give up on it. Like there was so many times that I just was like, why am I doing this to myself? This is miserable. And then I would rip it out and then I would figure something else out and be back on track. And then I would, depending on where I was at in the process, sometimes my message, like, let's say I got through like the difficult part and I got to the part where my design was coming together again and I saw it coming to life. That would be a post in a caption where I would say something along the lines of, this has had a lot of ups and downs, but if I look back, it was so worth it. And wherever you're at in your journey of designing something or creating something new or just starting your business, like do not give up, because when you get to that next point and you kind of can look back at where you were, you're going to be so happy that you did. So just kind of those kinds of thoughts. My experience was specific to that cardigan, but other people can relate to it in a number of different ways. So always try and tell a story and don't be afraid to be vulnerable with it, because I think that that's what makes you a real person and more than just a business. You have a personality, you have feelings, you're kind of sharing what it's really like to walk in your shoes. And no one will ever fully understand everything that goes on between the pretty pictures on your feed. But it's a nice way to kind of step back and, again, just peel back that curtain and share what you actually have to say versus just like here's a picture of a cardigan I'm working on. You know, you can share what it means to you, what's going on, just anything like that. Let's see what else I've got here. Where do I want to jump to next? My notes are, I had them in one order, and I think I might just jump around. So I did share, I know I mentioned it already, but one of the things I did share was that I like to write my captions kind of in real time. Even if the picture is a picture I took like 2 weeks ago, it doesn't have to be like, let's say it's a picture of yarn. My caption doesn't need to be, this is Lion Brand Woolies Thick and Quick. It doesn't have to be that. It could be a caption about what it means to me to be a maker, or my design process, or anything at all that's on my mind. I do not think that it has to relate to the picture. I don't think that they should be like wildly different, but if you're like feeling like you should have to explain what's in the picture, I don't really think that that's the case. I think that you can expand on that more. Okay. Just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. Sorry, I keep like referencing my notes. I had to like get some thoughts down. Otherwise, I was just going to ramble about captions for this whole Instagram live, which I could definitely do, and we will definitely do when I get to your guys' questions toward the end. So hang with me here. That's about half of what I had, and we'll go through some tips, and then we'll do any questions that you guys have. Okay. So, basically, your overall goal as a caption, just to recap some of the things I shared, be authentic, be real, be vulnerable, be genuine, make something meaningful, and make something that people can learn from. So they might learn something about you, or they might learn something about crochet, or they might learn something about yarn. They might learn a business tip. It could just be a fun fact that they learn, but make their, put something in there that is, they'll walk away learning something. I also think questions are great. I think if you're going to ask a question in your Instagram caption, there's 2 great spots to put it, in my opinion. And again, these aren't things that I consciously do, but when I look back at my posts, this is what I was consistently doing. So there's 2 places I usually put a question in a post, and one is the first sentence, and the second is like the last sentence or the last kind of paragraph or section of a post. So if you put it in the first sentence, I'm like blanking out, but if you put it in that first sentence, questions like, can I ask you a favor? Or can I be real with you for a second? Sometimes they can just be like a rhetorical question. Other times, if it's something that I actually want people to answer, sometimes it belongs more in the bottom of the caption. So something like, do you guys think that this would look better in chunky yarn or in worsted? And then that would relate to the picture, and they could choose between like 1 or 2 things in the picture and say like, do you guys like this better or this better? Or like, swipe to see the options and leave a comment of what you guys like better. So actually prompting them like with some options, and then it gives people a reason to stop and leave a comment instead of ambiguous questions. Like, I know I talked about this last week, but I can't stand, I don't think it's a good practice to just say things like, what's the weather where you are? What's the weather like where you are today? Because that's not something that's interesting enough. That's not something that's really benefiting anybody. It's really just making small talk, and most people aren't really fans of small talk. So make it something that people actually want to stop and like give their opinion, or something that would actually help you. Like if I say, can you guys help me out? Do you like option A or B better? And then you guys can chime in, and that gives the person feedback that they can then like take and go on their next step of their project or pattern with. So that's my thoughts on asking questions. Whenever I see advice on how to write good Instagram captions, people always say, ask a question, ask a question. But if you're not being genuine and it's a question that like no one cares about, no one is going to take the time to respond. So one good practice, and I'll reiterate this at the end of this live, but anytime that you write any type of caption, stop and ask yourself, like, is this something that I would actually read the whole thing? Would I care about this? Did I learn anything from this? Was this interesting? Would I have stopped and commented on this? And that should kind of answer whether or not it's a good caption. Because if you're not willing to, like, if you look at your own stuff and you're like, yeah, I would never be interested in this if someone else posted it, then no one will probably be interested in it if you post it. You know what I mean? Okay, so another thing too, I know I'm talking a lot about kind of putting yourself out there and really how to like reach people and connect with people in your captions, but don't be afraid of like a simple caption. Sometimes you only need a couple sentences and it could just be like just as impactful as paragraphs, but again, just be really intentional, make sure it's meaningful, and make sure that it's something that people will walk away learning something, either about you or about a situation or a tip or trick or whatever it is. Make sure that it's something that people walk away slightly better than before they read your caption. Now let's get to some other tips. Some of this is from questions that you guys asked me, and if you guys have questions for me that you want to chat about, feel free to add them in now, because this will just take me a couple minutes, and then we can go over any questions that you guys have, which I'm excited to hear what they are, because again, I can ramble about this topic all night long. So, okay. I already said don't do any dumb questions. Okay, I know there's no such thing as a dumb question, but just try and make it like something that's actually enticing to stop and answer. If you guys have ever seen a post, I do this all the time, but I tend to have a long caption, so I tend to have like a few small paragraphs in a caption. And if you're doing that, I know I got a lot of questions about if there's such thing as like too long of a caption. I don't really think so. I think that if you're writing something that's engaging and important and grabs people's attention, they'll keep reading it. So one thing that I think that does help is breaking that up. So in order to do that, you'll write like, let's say 2 or 3 sentences, period. Click enter, and you can do this right in the Instagram app. You don't even need to copy and paste from your notes app or anything else. You're going to click enter, and then you're going to put either a period. I just do a period, but you can do like an emoji there. You can do like an X or a dash, whatever you want. So you're going to write a couple sentences. Don't hit space or anything. Click enter, put a period, click enter again, continue writing a couple more sentences, and then again, don't put a space after the period. Click enter. Again, put like another period or something. Don't put any spaces there. And then click enter again. And basically what it'll do is make your caption nice and actually spaced out in paragraphs instead of having like one really long thing of like a ton of sentences. It's a super, super, super simple tip, but the key to it is that you don't want to put spaces after the period before you hit enter. Because if you do, then it gets like all messed up and kind of messy. But that's a quick tip for you. Make sure that you do that, because one long paragraph is just it's a little bit overwhelming. If you're just trying to scroll and have a good time and you're sitting eating lunch or sitting, on your couch or whatever, and you're just trying to scroll, like you're not going to stop and read an essay. But if it's broken up nicely, then you can kind of like skim through it, and you can kind of get to the point a little bit better. I also think, like I said, that a short and sweet caption works just as good. I don't think it has to be paragraphs or your life story, but just make sure that it's something meaningful. Someone else did ask me about emojis. I love emojis. I love putting emojis in my captions, especially if it has to do with whales. You will see a whale emoji in it. I even have emojis in my Instagram bio because I just think they're fun. They're expressive. I love exclamation points. I love anything like fun. It like adds life to your captions. So don't be afraid of using emojis. I really enjoy them. But just like everything else we're talking about, don't overdo it. Emojis are one where if you overdo it, it's like the first thing you notice is like, wow, there's like emojis everywhere. And if it's something really exciting, Don't be afraid to use all caps. Don't be afraid to use exclamation points. Don't be afraid to use emojis, but just don't overdo it. So I usually save those like super, 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 super excited captions, and like where I'm like kind of like yelling almost in my caption. I usually save those for like a pattern release. But if it's like a regular Tuesday and I'm just like posting a work in progress, you know, it can be like a couple notches down from like pattern release level excitement. Another question I got, this was probably the most asked question that I got. And sorry, I love talking with pens in my Instagram lives. I don't know if that bugs anybody. Maybe I should try and stop, but I love talking with pens. Okay. Anyway, most asked question that I got was about how to not be salesy in your captions, because a lot of us are makers that are selling a product or a service. We want to make money, right? And you want to make sure that people are aware of what you're doing, but you don't want to be salesy. And I, seriously, you guys, this was at least half the questions I got was about how do I sell stuff? How do I like announce a new product, or how do I sell something without being salesy? Okay. I'm going to try and like sum this up. But just like I talked about earlier, if you stop and ask yourself those questions of like, is this something I would stop and read? Is this something I would find interesting? Would I learn from this? Would I stop and comment on this? If you look at your post and it feels really salesy and really cheesy, then it probably is. So how do we avoid that, right? I think one of the best ways is to think of social media as like an introduction. This is a safe space where you're like hanging out with friends. If you were hanging out with your friends and every single time you met up with them for coffee, you were like, hey guys, like, do you want to buy this pen from me? And then you met up, you know, with them for coffee again the next week and you were like, hey, like, did you want to buy this pen again? And then the next week you were like, hey, I have this pen. Do you want to buy it? Your friends would probably stop inviting you to coffee. That would be super annoying. But just like everything else, if we don't overdo it, it's okay, because that pen could be like the greatest pen they've ever used, and maybe you have a really good deal on it and you really want to offer it to them. So my kind of rule of thumb is that your Instagram should not be about selling stuff. Use your website for that, use your email list for that, but Instagram is like a fun space and an introduction. So I like to think of it like 1 in every 10 posts that you make can be a sales pitch. 1 in 10 or less. Now, on the other hand, I think that it is very valuable to provide information to people without selling to them. So in a lot of my posts, you'll notice things like, and actually, I'll tell you how my perspective on this kind of changed, but I used to just post pictures and I'd be like, I don't even want to do the pattern hashtag or say it's available at the link in my bio because that's annoying. I don't want to be salesy to people. But then people wouldn't even know that it was a pattern I sold. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just assumed that people knew that like this was my pattern. And they would be like, oh my gosh, where's this pattern from? And I'd be like, it's mine. It's my pattern. But they didn't know. So to kind of meet in the middle, what I usually do is if I post a picture, I say some cool story or meaningful caption, then at the bottom of it, I'll do that kind of trick again to kind of, you know, create another new little paragraph, and I'll just say pattern, hashtag Sitka shawl, available at the link in my bio. And that way it's not so much a sales pitch, but it's just like the fine print there. It's like, hey, if you were curious, this is available at the link in my bio. It's not like the entire caption is like, hey guys, just so you know, this is my Sitka shawl. Go buy it at the link in my bio. I can't wait. I hope you love it. I hope you make it. Make sure you tag me. Like, that's a different message than saying a really nice caption and then saying, hey, by the way, this is my Sitka shawl pattern. You can grab it at the link in my bio. So that way you're still providing people information. They can still kind of understand and link the fact that that is something that you sell without you just like blasting them and being like, hey, oh my gosh, like you need to buy this. So again, with my like coffee example and going to go get coffee with your friends, it's kind of like saying, you know, if your friend is always like, oh my gosh, I love your outfits. You can say, well, hey, you know, I got this from wherever. it's kind of the same idea. If you're just providing that information up front, it's like that relationship with your friends where they're going to be like, hey, like, where'd you get that pen from? It writes really nice. And you'll be like, oh, I got it from wherever. Versus getting in someone's face and saying, oh my gosh, you need to buy this. You need to get this right now. Which sometimes a sense of urgency is good, but save that for those 1 in 10 posts that you're really going to use to try and actually sell a product. Let me see here. I think those are most of my points. I think I responded to most of your guys' questions. So let me get to your guys' questions in here. Gotta scroll up a little bit. How often do you tag people in your own posts? I always tag things if they are relevant. So for example, I use Furls crochet hooks 99% of the time. And so they end up being in a lot of my pictures. And anytime I have one of their hooks in my picture, I always tag them because why not? One, it gives people information that, oh, that's where that crochet hook is from. Oh, I can go check that out if I'm interested. And then two, it tells those brands or those designers like, hi, I'm over here, I'm using your stuff. And then they have the opportunity to reshare it. So one thing that always kind of hurts my heart inside is sometimes people will use my patterns, which is amazing and I'm so appreciative. But if they just tag me in their caption, that ends up getting bumped down by other notifications from Instagram, and then I lose track of it and I forget, and so I can't reshare it because it might have just gotten like pushed down. But if you tag someone in the actual image, then they can go to their profile and see pictures that they were recently tagged in. So a lot of times if I'm going to do like a bunch of posts to my stories sharing people that have made my patterns, I just go to my profile and see pictures that I've been recently tagged in, and that's usually where I find those pictures to share from. Or I'll go to like hashtag Sitka shawl, since I've been using that example, and I'll see like recent pictures. So I think you should definitely always tag people if it's relevant, but sometimes I get tagged in things that have nothing to do with me, and people will tag like 20 different accounts in their picture that have nothing to do with it. Don't do that. That's really irritating. And I always remove myself from it because it's not relevant at all. So if it's something relevant, definitely tag it. Yarn companies are great to tag. Hooks or needles are great to tag. Anything like that, that's pretty much what I stick to. Or a designer is always great to tag too. Do I plan posts for the month or just go with the flow? I plan just my pictures in my feed, and I plan usually like a week or two in advance. Right now I only have like a few posts planned in advance, but usually like a week or two in advance. So I will just kind of sit down on a Saturday and take a ton of pictures. I try and, maybe think of like 5 to 10 different images I can take, and then that'll give me 5 to 10 different days worth of posts. But I don't plan my captions in advance. So that's really just me sitting down at the end of the night and thinking about what I actually want to say. Do you find that you get more likes if you're tagging others? I don't tag other makers unless it's actually relevant to them. Yeah, so I only really tag if it's like a designer and I made their design, or I'll tag like just in the actual caption if it's like, oh, my friend, Chantel from Knititude told me the other day, blah, 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 in my caption. I don't do that very often, but that's one reason that I would tag another maker. What do you think of putting hashtags in the comments versus in the caption? I always do them in the comments because I think it's a better just like user experience. I don't like to see a ton of hashtags in a caption. So I always try and prioritize like people and what I enjoy versus what the Instagram algorithm may or may not prefer. Because at the end of the day, I'm asking people to stop and like and read my comment or my captions. And like the Instagram algorithm can get that in front of them, but what's really most important is that people actually enjoy what they're seeing, and I just don't like to see all the hashtags in the caption, but I see people do that all the time. You can bump it down quite a ways if you want to kind of keep it away and separate from the actual words that you wrote. I don't really think it matters too much either way. But I've never really seen a conclusive answer or post on that. So there could be some research out there. Thank you for the tip about don't hit the space bar. I have trouble with my spacing. That must be why. Fantastic. Yes, I used to have that happen to me too, and I could never figure out why. That it would like, because if you put a space there, what'll happen instead of bumping it down, it'll be like your sentence, period, space, period, and like keep going with the rest of your words. And it's like, wait, what? No, I want you to like go down to the next paragraph. Don't be a cheeseball. Yes, Natalie. I think, oh my gosh. Sometimes, yeah, if you think that it feels forced or cheesy in any way, that's almost guaranteed how it's coming off to your audience. Also, people tag so many people that you can't isolate them to check them out. Yes. One time that did happen to me because I posted a picture of, it was like a tote bag, and I had like 30 different enamel pins on it. And so I was tagging all the enamel pin designers or like businesses that I bought them from. And then you like clicked on the post and there was just like so many tags that popped up that you couldn't even really read or click on the one that you wanted to see where the pin was from. So I learned from that. It wasn't a whole lot I could do. I still wanted to tag them because I want to give them credit. And again, just say like, hi, I'm over here. I really like your stuff. Just to make that connection with people. Good tip with leading with a rhetorical question. Yeah, sometimes those quick little attention grabbers I think are really impactful. I have my Instagram up. I have my computer behind you guys. And I have my Instagram up just because I was like opening posts to see like what my captions were. I heard one tip that said to read your captions out loud and see if you like them, but I'm honestly probably not brave enough to do that. Sometimes I say things in my captions that are just very like heartfelt and sincere, and like it's really raw. And so they're things that I don't always know if I could say out loud. But like this caption I just pulled up, it was a picture of a crochet hook, and my first sentence was, do you ever feel like you're not worthy? So that's interesting. Like if I think about people that I follow and enjoy seeing their stuff, and if I saw that as the first sentence, I would want to read more. Let's look at another post. Oh, okay, let me look at this one. Oh, okay, so this was an example of like a super simple post. It was just a picture of like a crochet hook and a little swatch. And I said, isn't it crazy that we make things out of string? And then I did like the little mind blown emoji. And then I went to the next little paragraph and I said, this little swatch will eventually be a tank top. Keep your fingers crossed it doesn't take me forever because I want to wear it this fall. And then I did like the little fingers crossed and like a leaf emoji. So again, I like emojis. You might not, that's okay. But that was a super simple caption and people love the post. And I also think it was a really simple, crisp picture. Here, you know what? I will just show you guys. Would that be helpful if I just like pick up my phone and like turn it and I can show you guys some of these posts as I go through them? Because I have them up on my computer. Let me make sure I don't have anything I don't want to have open. If that would be helpful, click the hearts, maybe. Do you do collabs with smaller makers as well as bigger makers? Absolutely, but I'm very intentional with how I do collaborations because I feel like, especially for someone like me who works full-time, you just have to be really intentional with how you're using your time. So if it's the right fit, it doesn't really matter to me how big or small the person I'm collaborating with or brand that I'm collaborating with. If it's the right fit, like I'm in it 100%. And if I have any reservations or doubts, then it doesn't matter how big the other person is. One thing too, I'll tell you guys, you might notice this, but I never ever do Instagram giveaways. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I want people to engage with me and enjoy me and what I'm designing and what I'm doing and what I'm saying more than I want them just to follow me because I'm giving away free stuff. So for me, that's a very intentional decision, but when we talk about collaborations, again, like I don't really care how big a brand is. Like a lot of people think collaborating is like giveaways and stuff. And like, I don't do those regardless. And usually people are really understanding and we can collaborate in other ways than a giveaway. I love your captions, Sally. I can hear you and see your facial expressions through them. Oh my gosh, 100%. Natalie, yes, 100%. Amazing. Because I have standards. Okay, let me pull up some of these posts and we'll go through them. And I'm only going to pull up my own, so if I'm getting judgy, these are all my own posts. So yeah, I can look back and see what I said or did that might have been weird or awkward. Okay, let me flip the camera. Okay, so this was the post that I just told you guys about. And again, it's just like a super simple, oh wow, this is gonna be really hard to hold my phone. Okay, hang on. Anyway, it's just a super simple post. The caption was like really short and simple, but people really enjoyed it. It was like one of my most popular posts at the time. And when I posted this, this was like, I think one of my most liked pictures that I ever had at that point in time. So let's look at some other ones. And if you guys don't know, this is a really great tip. You can obviously use apps to see, you know, your Instagram statistics and metrics and analytics and all that. But if you guys are ever curious and you just want to do like a quick glance at how your recent posts have done, if you pull up your Instagram on a computer and hover over each post, it tells you how many likes and comments each one got. So like this one, 1,030 comments. This one, 1,049 comments. This one, 754, 13 comments. This one, 1,000. See what I mean? So it's a really nice way to just kind of do a quick little comparison, and kind of see like if there's anything like, oh, this one, okay, that's really interesting. This one's much higher, so I can click in it and see, okay, what did I do here that might have stood out, and why people engage with it more than other posts. So this was my really pretty infinity, which, spoiler alert, always gets more engagement than other posts because I think people just really enjoy the pattern, which is the coolest thing in the world. But this was my caption, and I haven't actually read this in a while, but everywhere I go, people ask me about the hashtag really pretty infinity. I'm not just talking about makers. I've never had so many people ask me about something I made before, which is really cool. So you guys can kind of see, it was just like an excited little happy post. And that was how I was feeling that day. I think I had worn this scarf and someone complimented it, which happens a lot when I wear it, which is really cool. So yeah, it wasn't really a super salesy one. It was just kind of like, hey, I'm really excited because I'm a maker and I'm proud of what I make. Another post, I know I talked about being vulnerable. This post, just so you guys know, I've learned over time that whenever I post a picture of enamel pins, they don't seem to get as much like traction as just like a progress or like crochet type picture. But this one did really well, and I think it's because of my caption. So this is a pin. It obviously says you do you. And over here, I did a whole caption, which I just started with, like I said earlier, you can always tell a story. So this is kind of what this was. A couple days ago, I saw everyone setting incredible goals online and immediately started to pick myself apart. So then I just kind of went on to say what I was feeling and how I felt a little bit defeated by seeing everyone else's amazing goals. And I kind of just like, this is kind of where I turn it into what would I say to myself, which is where I kind of just said, never compare yourself to others. And then basically just don't lose yourself in the hustle and the comparison game and all this craziness. Just stay true to yourself and you do you. So that's kind of an example, I think, of if I just posted this and said, look, I got a new pin, I don't think people would really care all that much. But I think what makes a post stand out and what helps it impact others is a caption like this, where, yeah, it's long, but people can learn something from it. And they learn something, I'm going to flip this back around now. they learn something about me, and they learn something, hopefully that leaves them feeling a little bit inspired, gives them a little bit of a different perspective, and something that, again, is just meaningful. So I think actually I didn't even plan that, but I think that was the perfect example of what I'm trying to get at in this live, of how I think you have to start with a good picture, and that your caption can really take it up a notch. And it can create a lot more engagement, a lot more excitement, and just help you connect with people. Because, again, kind of what I've been talking about this whole entire talk the past few weeks about engagement is it's not just about numbers. It's about actually connecting with people and creating relationships and making something meaningful out of this whole social media app. Because it has a lot of potential if we use it with good intentions and put our heart into it. I think I missed some comments here. So we'll wrap up with any of your last questions if you have them. And yeah, how do I feel about sales? I don't do them too often. I've read several different thoughts about them. Excellent question. This was actually one of my very first Instagram Live topics ever, over a year and a half ago, was about discounts and why I don't do discounts. At the time, I never did. But related to this in captions and engagement, I see Instagram as like a space where I'm hanging out with friends. I don't see it so much as a place like a billboard where I'm selling all my products and designs all the time. So I like to keep sales and discounts in my email list. I think if you receive an email, you're in more of a space where you're going to buy versus being on Instagram where you're just scrolling kind of for entertainment. So again, it's not that sales are terrible, but don't overdo it and be extremely intentional. I personally, which spoiler alert, but email lists will be one of my upcoming topics for an Instagram Live. I haven't decided when, but this is something I know it's not like a super fun sounding topic, but it's really important and it's so impactful if you're running a maker business. But I think that a lot of times promotions, announcements, things like that belong a little bit more in email. So if you're on my email list, you've probably seen some of those emails I send. If you're not, you can join at the link in my bio, and you just found out that sometimes I do promotions in there, which I don't ever really talk about here on Instagram. But I'm also trying to create a little bit more personal space in my email list too, where it's not just sales all the time either. Trying to create a little bit more personality there versus always just being like, hey, a new pattern. Hey, I saw and read all of that. The vulnerability draws you in right away. Thank you. I'm glad. Email list is one of my goals for this year. Can't wait to watch that live video. It is so much easier than you think, I promise. And my goal is that the live video will be truly like email lists, like 101, that we can break it down and you can start your own email list in an afternoon and be like set up and running and just tackle it. Okay, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you guys are excited about email lists. I thought I would really have to like explain why that would be important, because I know it's not always as fun sounding, but it's so impactful. Like, I can't even tell you guys. I know this is not really the topic I'm talking about tonight, but my email list audience is significantly, like, way smaller than my Instagram audience. And yet, if I release a new pattern, more of my sales come from my email list than Instagram. Way more of my sales come from my email list with way less people on my list. It's incredible. And I feel like it's truly because give people information the way they want to hear it when they want to hear it. Instagram is a space to connect with people. Do that in your captions. Create relationships there. And we'll talk about doing sales and doing that in email for another Instagram Live. Well, two, I think it gets to the folks who want the info because they signed up for it. They are more likely to buy. 100%. 100%. Your eyes always make me smile. Okay, that is the nicest thing ever. So with that, I'm gonna close this Instagram Live out. Again, I haven't decided if I'm gonna do this one as a blog post or not. So I might do a poll on that probably right after this live just to see if that would be helpful for you guys. And yeah, we'll talk really soon about email lists. I can't even wait. That's one of my favorite topics. And hopefully too, we'll do a chatty Instagram live soon where I can just crochet with you guys and we can hang out and we can just chat about life and whatever we've got going on. Hey, Mom. Okay, so I'm going to head out, I'm actually just going to head to my couch and go crochet. But I will see you guys next week, same time, same place, different topic, and I'll let you guys know next week what that will be. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I never say this enough, but I'm so thankful that you guys took the time to spend part of your evening with me on here, and I hope that it was really helpful for you. So I'll see you guys next week.